Imagine an ancient world full of mystery and secrets just before the flood changed history forever. Humanity had begun to multiply upon the face of the earth, but with this growth also came decay. A dark and dangerous path was beginning to open up, and Genesis 6 gives us a key clue about this direction. There, the sons of God and the daughters of men are mentioned, two groups that, for inexplicable reasons, intersect in a way that alters the entire course of human history. Who were these sons of God? This is one of the most intriguing questions presented to us in the Bible. Before we begin this fantastic story, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel so you can stay updated on every epic narration. You can also leave in the comments where you are watching from and what you think about this great fantastic tale. In the first verses of chapter 6 of Genesis, we are told that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took wives for themselves from among them. But what does this mean exactly? The Bible does not provide a clear explanation, which has led to countless theories and debates among theologians, scholars, and believers over the centuries. A common interpretation, supported by some ancient traditions, is that these sons of God were not human beings, but fallen angels, celestial beings who had abandoned their position in the heavens and descended to earth. These angels, driven by an inexplicable attraction, decided to unite with human women. In this context, the act of the sons of God taking human wives is seen as a violation of the divine order, a transgression that destabilizes creation itself. This interpretation suggests that the angels not only transgressed the limits of their nature, but also altered the moral and spiritual order of the universe. On the other hand, others suggest that the sons of God were simply the descendants of Seth, the righteous son of Adam, and that the daughters of men were the descendants of Cain, Seth's brother, who had killed his brother Abel. According to this interpretation, what is at stake is not so much a celestial violation, but a mixing between the righteous and the wicked, a breaking of the lines of descent that had been drawn by God. In this case, sin would be the result of the union of those who followed God with those who had turned away from Him. Regardless of how this enigmatic passage is interpreted, one thing is clear. This interaction, this crossroads, marks the beginning of a profound change in humanity. The disobedience to divine laws had begun, and the consequences of this transgression would be felt not only on earth, but also in the heavens. What seemed like a simple act of human or spiritual attraction was about to give rise to a story that would change humanity forever. This seemingly trivial moment becomes the starting point of something much greater, an event that will shake the very foundations of creation, paving the way for what would come next. The rise of the giants, a completely new generation, which would bring the world to the brink of its own destruction. And it is here, at this point of transgression, where the narrative delves even deeper into the mystery and gravity of what would happen next. What consequences would this union between the sons of God and the daughters of men bring? How would this crossroads change the destiny of all humanity? When the sons of God joined with the daughters of men, they were not only challenging the natural order, but also setting in motion a series of events that would trigger divine judgment. Genesis 6 verse 3 is God's reaction to this union. "My spirit shall not strive with man forever." This verse, laden with gravity, marks the beginning of an imminent divine judgment. God observes how humanity has fallen into such deep corruption that the future of creation itself is in danger. God, in His infinite wisdom and justice, cannot tolerate this transgression. By saying that He will not contend with man, He is indicating that His patience has come to an end. The divine spirit, which had been present to guide and protect humanity, is now withdrawing. This is an act of judgment that indicates humanity has crossed a line, a point of no return in its relationship with God. It is no longer a simple individual sin or a minor transgression. Here, sin has taken on a collective form, involving celestial and human beings, altering the very fabric of creation. What began as a forbidden attraction quickly turned into a moral and spiritual downfall that affected not only the men but also the angels who decided to mix with them. These sons of God, if we follow the traditional interpretation, were not humans, but fallen angels, beings who were once in the presence of God, but who, due to their rebellion, were cast out of heaven. These fallen angels are not mere spiritual beings who simply disobey God. Their rebellion had begun much earlier, with the fall of Lucifer, who rebelled against the Lord seeking his own glory. According to the scriptures, Lucifer and his followers were cast out of heaven, and from that moment on, their goal was to corrupt what God had created. And now, at this critical moment in the history of humanity, their rebellion reaches a new level. Instead of remaining in their celestial realm, they decide to descend to earth and unite with human women. This act is not just a physical transgression, but a profound spiritual alteration. It is a rebellion not only against the divine order, but against the very essence of what it means to be human. At this moment, heaven and earth intertwine in a way that should not have happened. The angels, beings created to serve and praise God, made a decision that would transform the very nature of humanity. By uniting with human women, they not only brought sin into the world but also sowed a seed of corruption that would produce creatures of a hybrid nature, the Nephilim, giants whose origins were marked by this violation of divine laws. The union between the fallen angels and human women not only had physical consequences, as we will see with the giants that would be born, but it also profoundly affected the soul of humanity. This mixture of the celestial and the earthly brought with it a spiritual imbalance that could not be ignored by God. The justice of God, in the end, would have to prevail over rebellion, and that meant an imminent judgment was approaching to cleanse the earth of the corruption that had invaded it. And with this transgression, a cycle of corruption and violence began to unfold, leading to the appearance of the Nephilim, the giants who not only represented the physical blend of the celestial and the earthly, but also a generation that overflowed with human morality and ethics. These beings would be the tangible manifestation of rebellion, and soon their influence would further darken the earth. But that's just the beginning. The judgment of God is near, and the consequences of this forbidden act will be much more severe than we can imagine. When we read in Genesis 6 verse 4 that there were giants on the earth in those days, we are confronted with one of the most mysterious and perplexing images in the Bible. The Nephilim, as they are called in this verse, were not only giants in terms of physical size, but also in their power, their presence, and their impact on humanity. These beings, born from the forbidden union between fallen angels and human women, became mythical figures, feared and revered, leaving an indelible mark on ancient history. The word Nephilim comes from Hebrew, and it is generally translated as fallen or the fallen. This name not only reflects their physical nature, but also their spiritual and moral origin. These giants were not simply large humans. Their very existence represented a violation of the natural order established by God. They were, in a sense, the descendants of a cosmic rebellion, and their presence on earth was the direct result of the mixing of the divine and the human. This fact endowed them with a unique and dangerous nature, which transcended the boundaries of what was considered possible. The Nephilim were described as men of renown, brave and powerful beings, whose feats and exploits likely became legends passed down from generation to generation. In fact, in many ancient cultures, giants were symbols of strength, power, and nobility, but also of destruction and chaos. These beings, in a way, were the very reflection of transgression itself, a blend of the divine and the human that could only result in something extraordinary. What made them so different? Not just their physical size, but also their capacity for influence. They were both heroes and villains, figures who altered the moral and spiritual balance of the world. Their mere existence questioned the divine plan for humanity. How could these giants, born from the rebellion of the angels, coexist with human beings without creating chaos and corruption. The power and strength of the Nephilim were not only reflected in their appearance, but also in their impact on the society of the time. Imagine a humanity that is not only being harassed by violence and sin, but also has to deal with giants walking on the earth, beings whose presence awakens both fear and admiration. These Nephilim were not just beings of physical power, but they also had the ability to influence the minds and hearts of those around them. They were men of renown, figures whom many looked up to as leaders or role models, but who, in reality, represented a threat to morality and justice. The Nephilim represent one of the most complex figures in the biblical narrative. They are the children of transgression, the descendants of a rebellion that sought to corrupt creation itself. But despite their size and power, these giants would not be able to withstand the judgment of God. Creation had been altered, and sin had reached such magnitude that the only way out was the destruction and purification of humanity. And so, the Nephilim, though great and feared, would be the precursors of an era of chaos and judgment that was approaching, because, as we will see in the next topic, the wickedness of humanity would not be limited to just the giants. Sin and corruption had permeated every corner of the earth, and God's judgment was closer than ever. The flood, the event that would cleanse the earth, was already in the divine plans, and its arrival would mark the end of the Nephilim and of that entire corrupt generation. With the appearance of the Nephilim and the transgression of the sons of God, by joining with the daughters of men, humanity not only experienced the creation of fearsome and powerful giants, but also the moral and spiritual collapse of the entire earth. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 7, offers us a grim picture of this fallen world. It tells us that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. This is not a simple description of a chaotic world. It is a declaration of the total collapse of the human soul. Corruption, violence, and sin had taken hold of humanity in such a way that God himself was deeply affected by it. Not only had human behavior fallen into wickedness, but also the nature of the human heart had been completely corrupted. The thoughts, the intentions, the actions, everything was directed towards evil. Humanity no longer just committed evil acts, but its very nature had been deformed by sin. People no longer thought about doing what was right, but constantly about evil, and that led them to commit all kinds of atrocities. Moreover, the Nephilim themselves, born from the transgression of the fallen angels, probably played an important role in this chaos. As beings of great power and strength, it is possible that these giants were not only figures of great fear, but also instigators of the violence that erupted throughout the land. Their very presence, as supernatural beings born of disobedience, may have exacerbated moral corruption, promoting a culture of power, violence, and oppression. The situation reached such a critical point that God, seeing this total corruption, could only lament the creation of humanity. Genesis 6 verse 6 says that the Lord regretted making man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. This verse is profoundly moving because it shows us a God who, in his love and justice, grieves for the condition of his creation. God does not simply appear as a distant judge, but as a being who feels the pain of humanity in its fullest expression. His creation, which had been designed to reflect his image, had fallen into such a level of degeneration that it pained his heart. This is not just an act of anger or punishment. It is also an act of divine sadness, as if the Creator were to see his children irreparably corrupted and could not look without intervening. With humanity completely overwhelmed by sin, God reaches an irreversible decision. The judgment of humanity is necessary. And here is where God's judgment takes an impressive but also merciful form. In Genesis 6 verse 7, God declares, "I will destroy every living thing I have made from the face of the earth, The flood would be the purification that would put an end to this cycle of evil. However, at the same time, God does not completely abandon humanity. In the midst of this judgment, He provides an escape, a new opportunity through Noah, a righteous man, and his family. Noah becomes the starting point of a new humanity, an opportunity for humanity to start anew, free from the weight of the corruption that had dominated the earth. And while humanity was on the verge of being swept away by the waters of judgment, a new cycle was beginning. A cycle that, although it involved the death of the corrupt, also meant an opportunity for redemption for those who remained faithful to God. This judgment, although terrifying, was the last hope to restore order in creation. This is the climax of human corruption. Humanity had not only fallen into sin, but had become a completely destructive society. Violence and sin were the norm, and the heart of God, filled with pain, was willing to purify the earth with the flood. But the mercy of God, reflected in the figure of Noah, offered a way out, a new opportunity to start anew. The story of the giants and human corruption culminates at a point of no return, the judgment of God. In the midst of all this moral decay, there was a figure who stood out, a man who, unlike all the others, had maintained his righteousness. Genesis 6 verse 8 tells us that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and it is in him where the hope of humanity and creation itself was placed. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time, and although he lived in a world of violence and rebellion, he remained faithful to God. It was he who, through his obedience, became the divine instrument to preserve human and animal life, the ark that would save all that was just and pure. But the story of the flood is not just the story of a righteous man who saves his family. It is also the purification of a completely corrupted world. The flood, although it was the divine judgment on evil, was also an act of mercy. By destroying everything that had fallen into sin, God was providing the opportunity for a new beginning. Through Noah and those who accompanied him in the ark, humanity could start anew. The flood not only eliminates corruption, but also establishes a new covenant between God and humanity, with the promise that He would never again destroy the earth in this way. This judgment is profound in its symbolism. The water, which was once a means of purification, becomes a means of destruction for the corrupt. Everything that was not in the ark was swept away, but the ark, with Noah and his family inside, becomes the symbol of salvation amidst the chaos. At the end of the flood, when the waters calmed, the rainbow appeared as a sign that the judgment had concluded and that God's covenant with humanity had been renewed. Noah, with his family, was the beginning of a new humanity, a humanity that should learn from the mistakes of the past and walk in the ways of God. The future of the Nephilim is one of the mysteries left by the story of the flood. The Bible does not explicitly mention what happened to the giants after this catastrophic event. Many theologians agree that the Nephilim were exterminated in the flood, as they were part of the corruption that had led humanity to its downfall. However, some argue that, although the physical giants disappeared, their influence and legacy could have persisted in some way. Some theories suggest that their descendants or the spirit of rebellion they represented might have left a mark on later humanity. After the flood, the world would begin anew, but the memory of the Nephilim would remain alive. The legends of giants and fallen heroes who dominated and terrified ancient civilizations would remain present in culture and traditions. In various cultures and mythologies, we find tales of giants who fight against the gods, who live on the fringes of the known world, or who play a crucial role in the creation and destiny of humanity. This cultural legacy of the Nephilim is a reflection of how a story that began in ancient texts continues to impact the collective imagination of later generations. The story of the Nephilim in Genesis 6 is not just an ancient narrative, but an eternal reminder of the struggle between good and evil. It is a reflection on how sin and rebellion can corrupt even the most powerful forces in the universe, and how, in the end, divine justice will prevail. Despite the destruction and violence, there is always an opportunity for redemption, and God, in His mercy, offers a new beginning, just as He did with Noah and his family. Through this story, we are invited to reflect on the nature of sin and the importance of remaining faithful to the ways of God. The judgment of God and mercy go hand in hand, and although evil may seem insurmountable, there is always an opportunity for those who choose the right path. The legacy of the Nephilim, though mysterious, also leaves us a lesson. Everything that is of rebellion and disobedience, even if it has temporary power, is destined to disappear before the divine will. I invite you to subscribe to my channel and continue learning together about these fascinating stories, narrated in an epic way. God bless you.